The Fruitful Entrepreneurs podcast aims to increase the visibility of female leaders in business, inspire a limitless mindset to build your own blooming brand, and leave a positive impact with a purpose-driven business. Welcome to the Fruitful Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Tilbrook, and today I'm joined by Dr. Lillian Nejad, who's a clinical psychologist, author, and founder of mental health platform Skills for Life and the Worry app Contain Your Brain. She has 25 years experience with a focus on empowering individuals and groups with accessible, practical, and scientifically backed skills and strategies. Welcome, Lillian. So thank you so much for joining us.
No worries at all. Thank you for having me, Shelley.
Yeah, great. I've been really looking forward to our chat. It's a topic that I love talking about, and certainly I think most entrepreneurs would face challenges along the way that require a lot of mindfulness and gaining refocus and de-stressing. And so I'm really keen to explore that today. But before we dive into that, I'd love to just hear a little bit about your background. And how you started your business and what sort of skill strengths you had going into business.
Okay, well, as you can hear, I'm American. So I was originally grew up in the States, and I was educated in the States. I had a BA in psychology, and then I moved here, and I was in a program to get my clinical psychology degree. So I have a PhD in psychology. And then I went and started working in public mental health for many years. I also worked in university settings and some organization settings as well. And then about 8 years ago, I decided I was going to go into private practice. Mm-hmm. And so I started my own private practice business 8 years ago called OmniPsych. And then 3 years ago, during the pandemic, I started an online business called Skills for Life, which is basically a mental health portal that people can access to get some good evidence-based psychological strategies to help them with stress and anxiety and sleep, and gain some skills. And then, last year I launched an app with a partner, Brenton Canizaro, called Contain Your Brain, which is an app that helps people with worry so that they can reduce their stress and get some rest and achieve more during the day and enjoy their life.
Yeah, fantastic. That's amazing. So yeah, you started out with starting your own practice, then you've gone into a digital platform, and then you've actually gone into the big development of your own app. Each step, I guess, is, a moment of courage that you've had to take to,
That's true.
Obviously back yourself, invest in something else. How did you go about that? Do you have a really strong belief set yourself, or was it just dive in and see what happens? I'd love to sort of hear how you managed that big transition.
Well, nothing I do is impulsive. I'm one of those people that I do research things a lot. I think about things a lot. Moving into the private practice was probably the first major leap of faith. In some ways it was easier because I had, this really long background in clinical psychology, working for big organizations and with a really broad range of clients over many years. So I wasn't nervous about getting clients. I think it was more about just starting a business, like doing everything myself. And that was a big learning curve. So I think in terms of how I made that decision, it took me a while. I wanted it to be the right time. My children were little still. Mm-hmm. And I think the support of my husband saying, no, I think you can do this. We're in a place where, even if it doesn't work right away, it's okay. So I think that really helped. Yeah. And then so I was able to just take that leap and then learn how to start a private practice. It took, a few months as a psychologist working in public mental health. It's actually really hard to charge people for things. So I think that was one of my major hurdles, was that it's okay to actually charge people for your services, and your services have value, and if you give it away for free, that's really nice, but also you can't sustain yourself and have a business that way. So, and people want to pay for your services too, because they value your services. So I think that was just a learning curve for me as well.
Yeah. And I guess, you've got this background from all your degrees and research and so forth and experience, but starting a business, did you find you had a couple of skill gaps, and what were they, and how did you,
so many. I had so many skill gaps. I think with the first business, as I said, it was mainly just researching the software platforms that were going to help me create a more automated, more seamless business. And I didn't have to do any marketing because I had a network that, that I had established over many years. So I didn't have to do any of that. Yeah. When I started Skills for Life, that was a completely different situation. An online digital platform, you have to learn how to sell, you have to learn how to market, you have to learn, a different way of writing. There's so many aspects to it, and to developing a business plan and having a clear marketing strategy and all of those things. There were massive, massive gaps for me. One of the things that I did to try to fill that gap was to join a couple of business networks where there were people who were either at the same place that I was or much, much, much more experienced, so that I could actually learn the way it's supposed to be done and start putting kind of things in place as I learned how to do those things. Yeah, I think, I was also lucky. My husband's in business too, so he would give me pointers along the way. But, we don't always want to take advice from our husbands. We need other people to give us some skills and strategies as well, and other perspectives. So I think having the combination of those things was really helpful. And it's still a work in progress. You can't actually be everything. Yeah. You can do a lot of things. Like I try to do almost everything. But I'm also very aware I'm not an expert at everything. So there are times where it's really important to seek support, to outsource some things, to delegate some things, and try to focus in on what you do best, at least most of the time.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think, surrounding yourself with those mentors or experts, like you say, or people that are going through exactly the same path that you are, I think it's really, really smart move. In terms of, sorry.
I was just going to say, because the app was the third thing, I think that it was the business that was created from the beginning in a really strategic way. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that helped me was because I had a business partner who had a completely different skill set than me. So I had the psychological background and I could provide the content and that psychological kind of expertise and experience. Yeah. And he had that digital design and tech background. So he was able to help with writing specifications and also creating that kind of business plan and understanding, who the targets are, like who are the best people that we're trying to solve this problem for, and how do we get that message out to those people. So I feel like with Contain Your Brain, that it's much, much easier now to talk about and to write about and to, develop relationships and create those kinds of opportunities with something, because it was set up from the beginning so well. So I think over time it just gets better and better, but it's a lot of time and investment to get to that point.
Yeah, well, even so, I've probably built 10 apps over my journey, and I think my first was my worst. So you've done exceptionally well.
Oh, thank you.
In your brain. I've downloaded it. I'm having a go at using it. So
great.
Yeah. I suppose one of my questions that I'm keen to sort of explore a little bit more on is around you've obviously, when you've started 3 different businesses. Do you feel like you're running 3 different businesses with 3 different business plans, or is it a case of it was a natural progression and they're also correlated and interrelated, or how do you feel in terms of that?
I feel like both. I feel like they are separate businesses for different reasons.
Yeah.
But also I'm actually right now working on streamlining that a bit because they are very connected.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got, my psychology practice. Not most people don't see a psychologist, even if they could, get support and help through a psychologist. A lot of people choose not to for various reasons. And that might be stigma or financial or a whole range of reasons. And so Skills for Life was really to make the strategies that I would impart to a client accessible to anyone, whether they saw someone like me or not. That was kind of the point. So they are related to each other. And Contain Your Brain is kind of an extension because it's just taking one of those strategies and putting it in an app to make it easier to implement. And because it's a strategy associated with worry, it ties in very well to the Skills for Life courses, which are about anxiety and stress and insomnia, which worry actually impacts.
Yeah.
So there is room to tie them more closely together. And I need to do that because it's not really effective or efficient in terms of my time and energy to run 3 really separate businesses. I think it's really important to simplify everything and streamline them and help people see the connection between the 3. Because some people are just going to need self-guided strategies or programs, and other people might need a combination of, self-guided and someone to talk to. And some people will need, clinical psychological treatment because they actually have a mental health issue or mental illness that they need some help with. So there's different things for different people. And so I think connecting them is a good idea. I'm working on it.
So the other question I have is in, I suppose, the course of the journey of running your business, you have developed an amazing personal brand through whether it's been writing books or hosting podcasts. Was that a conscious strategy that you thought you need to have a public profile to build your business, or is that sort of a default that's just come as a consequence? I'm curious to know.
I think, again, I'm going to say both again. I didn't want to be the front woman. That wasn't I wasn't after that kind of thought leadership role necessarily. What I wanted was to provide products and services that would help people. And so initially I was really thinking of my brand as Skills for Life, not Dr. Lillian Nejad, but over time and talking to lots of people who have more experience and expertise than I do, they really were advising me of flipping that around and saying, look, the reason why people would want anything from you is because of you, and you really need to put yourself out there more and make it more about you and put more of you into it. And I've taken that to heart. It's taken a while. It's a bit of a challenge, especially coming from a psychology background, because there are, boundaries you have to adhere to as part of just the regulatory and professional guidelines of the job. And so there are some things that I can and can't say that maybe other people who are not under a regulation board can say and do. So for me, it's just about, again, just another way of imparting information in a way that people like to hear it. So if that's in a podcast, and I'm happy to do things like this, or, be a guest on a different podcast. And I did create like a series of 6, like a limited series podcast at one stage that's, about mental health at work, just so that people have, again, another avenue to get information. So it's more about that. And books, again, was another avenue. And I created a few collections of mindfulness and relaxation exercises, which just makes it easier, again, for people to find techniques that might help them with stress or anxiety or sleep, and give them more options and choices, because there's so many options and choices out there, but we all have our kind of personal preferences in terms of the voice you want to listen to and the topics that come up and the music in the background. And there's so many things that you have to think about. So I've just given people as many options as I can. And then as a result of that, that means that I'm out there more and people know who I am more. And that it gives that impression that I'm, I guess,
we've certainly
doing that on purpose.
the personal branding we've certainly seen help people's business skyrocket.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm like you. I started behind my brand, and now I'm trying to step forward because we've seen how successful it actually is. So
yeah, and it is a challenge to put yourself out there, and you know when you put yourself on social media platforms, you don't know what's going to come back.
Yeah,
like it's almost always positive, but the times that it isn't. Or, someone doesn't agree, for instance, with what you say and very strongly disagrees, then, it can be disheartening to hear comments like that. So it's you have to prepare yourself for what the reality of it is when you put yourself out there, and make sure that you've got the supports around you to kind of help you through some challenges or difficulties that you might have along the way.
Absolutely. So as a 3 business owner and a mental health expert, I'd be curious to see what sort of self-care you bring into your daily ritual to maintain, I suppose, your mental clarity at work, to get the best out of your performance, and not get too stressed with everything that you would be juggling.
Yeah, I think one thing is to accept and expect that I will feel stressed sometimes, and then that's okay. And as long as it doesn't stay at this kind of high level all the time, because, everything changes, including how we feel, including our stress level. So if it's like this sometimes, I think that's a natural progression of what stress or anxiety might feel like. But I definitely, one of the main things that I do, that I was just speaking to a client about this the other day, was scheduling in nothing time.
Yep.
I think a lot of people have trouble with that. That's something that I feel like I haven't ever had trouble with. I don't feel guilty if I'm doing nothing. I don't see it as optional. I see it as a necessity. So for people who struggle with downtime or me time or alone time or nothing time, I really encourage them to start scheduling it in.
And what are you doing in those times? Is it read a book or go for a walk, or what sort of thing is it?
Look, sometimes it's literally nothing. Like sometimes I just need to lie on my bed for 5 minutes and just rest. And I started that I probably did a lot of nothing time before children, just in general. But after children, and when they're little and things are busy and, you're picking up and dropping off and all of that sort of stuff, I think I started like really making sure I had at least that 5 minutes to myself. And it would be something that my kids learned, like this is my time, and you don't come in and, during that time you like amuse yourself, and I'll come out in 5 minutes and we can do stuff together. But I think people don't realize how much even 5 minutes can help. Because there are going to be some days where you can take 20 minutes, or you can take an hour, or you can take a couple hours, or maybe even half a day. But sometimes you've got so much on, and all you can think about is, I don't have time. I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to sit down for 5 minutes. I don't have time. But you do have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that can be when you're out and about. Like you can maybe do a little mindfulness exercise as you're actually doing something that you need to do. Or you can lie down on your bed for 5 minutes, or, you can do something like have a nice cup of coffee, or a juice or something for 5 minutes, just to sit and be on your own and relax. And sometimes not on your own. Actually, mindfulness is something that I don't know that a lot of people think of mindfulness as like meditation. You have to do it on your own. It has to be in a, uninterrupted dark room, sitting in the lotus position, or, like all these kinds of ideas. But the way that psychologists, or at least I teach mindfulness, is a really practical way that can be done anywhere, anytime, around anyone. And it's because it's all it is about deciding to focus on something. And you can do that about, a sense. You can say, I'm going to focus on listening to the sounds around me, or I'm going to focus on this one sound. Or you can focus on what you're tasting and eating. I mean, those ones are the really basic ones that you can do anywhere. Or you can choose to focus on what you're doing. Like if it's brushing your teeth, or if it's driving, or if it's, you've got a task that you're doing. And you could even focus on how the pen feels as you're, writing something down. Like there's so many different ways to do mindfulness. That can be calming, that can improve your focus, that can increase your resilience, that can help you understand how you think and what your mind wants to do when you're trying to focus. And all of that increased awareness, and doing that in a really non-judgmental way can really help with kind of everything, not just your mindset, but your way of regulating your emotions, your ability to accept the experiences that you have, without having to feel guilt on top of it, or frustration, and all the things that we put on top of, feeling stressed and anxious, for instance.
Absolutely. Well, certainly I know during lockdowns, I was doing a puzzle, and I would just go 15 minutes to just forget about work for a moment, forget about it, trying to juggle, and I'd do a puzzle, and I'd do it guilt-free, and I'd realize how much better that made me feel. I think nothing is a great piece of advice, actually.
Yeah, I know it seems really simple, but it's actually something that a lot of people find extremely challenging. And they might schedule in free time, but then it's not actually free time, because as soon as somebody asks them for something, they filled it with some, so it's not just scheduling your free time, it's like keeping it free. That's really important. And we do need that kind of time to replenish and rejuvenate. And like I said, even if you only have a minute or 2 minutes, like take that time, just stay in the car for an extra 2 minutes and take that time, or, it's really important. It's not optional.
I think that's great advice. You mentioned earlier that you started the Skills for Life platform during COVID. Was COVID an instigator of that, or was it something in the plans and then that gave you the time to work on it? I'm curious to sort of understand.
I had been thinking about it before COVID, because I have been always creating new content for my clients over the years that I've worked as a psychologist. So I just had so much just sitting on, in my files on my computer. And so I had been thinking I should do something with the content. And originally it was maybe write another book. But then how many people are going to read the book? I was just thinking, what's the best way of getting the information out there that would reach the most people and that would be the most engaging? And so I thought, well, I'll try something new. And I think having that period of time where we were all just home, and I was working from home still, I just thought, well, this might be a good time to try to get some of that content together and create some programs. It was also instigated by being approached by another company. I had just published a book about insomnia, and this company had heard about that book. So they asked me to write a course for their platform on insomnia. And I think that was really helpful, because then I had a deadline. It was written, recorded, and on the platform within 3 months, maybe even less. It might have been 1 month. So I knew that I could do it. And then I got to see the results of it on their platform. And so 2 of my courses are on actually all of the courses are on other platforms as well as my own. But 2 of them specifically had like 14,000 people go through them. And I was able to see that they were doing well, that they were rated highly, that, I was able to see the questions that people had and where the gaps were. So when I put them on my own platform, I was able to improve upon them. I was able to add worksheets to it to make it like kind of fuller and more developed. And so it was a really great way of validating what I was doing and reassuring me that I was putting something out there that was of good quality, that people really liked and felt like they got some help with. And yeah, that's why I think I had the confidence of starting my own platform and putting some extra programs.
Yeah. And I suppose, being digital, you can really measure and see the engagement and, like you say, feedback really well, and continue to improve that product and what it's, I suppose the impact that it's able to achieve being digital can be so much greater than obviously that one-on-one work. So
yeah, and also you can cater to different people's learning styles. So like I have 2 audio programs, for instance, that's just like listening to a podcast for people who prefer just to listen to something. And then I have 2 programs that are video and audio and interactive. So you've got the listening, but you've also got the seeing and doing aspects that enhance people's learning for those people who prefer to learn in that way. So it's just, and then I've got, the books and the free resources that people can, just use. And so hopefully anyone that comes to my platform, and there's many out there, so to any platform, like that they have options and choices, and that something is going to work for them. Because I think sometimes things are presented as, here's the formula for success. Here's the one way to do everything to make yourself happy and have a great life and to be stress-free forever. And it's like, well, that's 1, not realistic, but 2, there's no one formula for anyone. So my programs are not about giving people a formula. It's about giving people a range of skills that are evidence-based that they can practice, and then they get to choose which of those skills are going to be on their list. So if you need to calm down quickly, or if you're going through a really challenging time, you will know these are my go-to strategies. These are my go-to, like this is my way, not everybody's way, because everybody's way or one person's way will not work for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's great. In terms of when you've, I suppose, hit a bit of a roadblock or a challenge, can you remember a time where you were like, oh, this is really difficult for moving forward, or how, what was that challenge and how did you overcome that in business? Or have you been pretty fortunate and it's been smooth sailing?
Oh my gosh. No, I think there's challenges every single day.
Yeah.
I think that's part of starting a business. Like if you go into business thinking it's going to be less challenging than working for somebody else, it's not less challenging. It's more enjoyable. Like that's why you do it, right? You do it because you've got the passion for it, and it gives you some freedom and flexibility to some degree to manage your own time and what you're doing. But there's so many challenges. And so a part of the challenge is just being able to cope with the fact that you're going to have challenges all the time.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of specific challenges, what I think are quite broad, like time. It's just time. If you're wearing a lot of, and money, time and money are like, I think the main ones, like where do you spend your time? And how do you spend your money so that you are maximizing your time and your energy, so that you're able to get the results that you want, not for other people and for yourself. And that's like a work in progress all the time. I think it's always something that you refine and you try, there's trial and error, and you learn from. You're like, oh, I spent a whole bunch of money on something that didn't get the results that I was hoping for, but it could have. It wasn't a mistake necessarily. It just didn't work out as expected. So you learn from that, and you don't make that kind of mistake again. Or if you do something similar, you do it in a different way, so you get different results. And I think that's just what it is. It's a learning process full of challenges and setbacks, but also, I think the process of learning on its own can be so satisfying just within itself. And then hopefully that process leads to the success that you're wanting for other people and for yourself.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that sounds what we all should be doing, really. In terms of, I suppose, our audience being female founders, I'm keen to sort of get a couple of tips for them that you would suggest that'll help them on their entrepreneur journey, either with, managing their stress levels or what you would recommend to a person in leadership that's running their own business.
Well, I think the first thing is be really nice to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be kind to yourself. Notice when you're not being that way. And it's okay if you have judgmental thoughts and if you criticize yourself sometimes. That's just like our brain is kind of primed to be judgmental, not just of ourselves, but of other people and other situations and circumstances. Those are natural thought processes. But if you can notice that, and then I always say there's two pathways that you can go if you have thoughts that are kind of getting in your way. One is called the acceptance pathway, which is just to notice that you've had the thought, not judgmentally, and just let your thought pass naturally through your mind. Because what can happen is we notice it and then we just attach ourselves to it and we start thinking about it and ruminating, and it starts connecting to all of these other thoughts about how, we're not doing well, or we're failures, or, we're imposters, or whatever those thoughts are connected to. But instead of doing that, if you can just say, oh, I've just had a judgmental thought, or I've just criticized, I just noticed I criticized myself, and just let that pass without attaching yourself, that can be a super helpful way. It's basically a mindfulness technique. Yeah. Notice non-judgmentally and just let the experience move forward without you actually trying to do anything to it. So that's one path that I think can be super helpful. The other pathway is the change pathway. So we've got acceptance and we've got change. A lot of people prefer change because we always want to fix things and solve problems. And it's just as effective, depending on who you are, right? So you're going to prefer one or the other, or maybe both. So change is notice your thought and then modify it, evaluate it, understand the origins of it. Basically get some more understanding about it. Ask yourself questions about what the evidence is for that, for instance, or is this really my belief? And then modify it so it is more realistic. So it doesn't have to be like a negative to a positive. Sometimes the positive is not a realistic statement. So you want to say something that is genuine and real, but is balanced so that you're not always on kind of the negative side of thinking or the pessimistic side of thinking, that you're like, okay, like for instance, with worries, people are always like, what if this happens? What if that happens? But they're not thinking about the what ifs for the positive things. They're just thinking about the what ifs for all the possible negative consequences. So it's like just balancing your perspective. Yes, some of those negative consequences might be possible. They might be realistic. But what about all the possibilities that are realistic on the other side? So those sorts of change strategies can be a really helpful way of dealing with your thoughts and your mindset as well. So I'd say, if you can learn, and that's all my courses are about, teaching those different kinds of skills, those different kinds of acceptance skills and change skills that can really help you manage your worries and your anxiety and your stress and any challenges that are kind of occurring in your life, and they will occur. So it's hard to accept that, but that's the truth of life. So if we can just accept the truth of life and then have the skills, and also make sure that you have the right supports, available to you. I think that support, being the number one factor in building resilience, is having close relationships. It's number one, not number two or three. It's the first one. So we really need to have people around us that we feel close to, that we can talk to, and who support us and encourage us and help us feel, good, and do that for others as well.
Yeah, amazing. No, I think both really good pieces of advice. And I hadn't sort of thought about, I probably do go straight to the fix the problem rather than accept. So I think that's really, really helpful to sort of think of it from both sides. So where to from here? Are you looking at developing anything new, or is there just, an expansion for the app, or is there other ideas in the works? what sort of does the next couple of years have in store for you?
Well, yeah, I always have something in the works. But I also am very conscious that I want to focus on making Contain Your Brain more visible. So I'm really focused on Contain Your Brain. And like I said before, simplifying my 3 kind of businesses, connecting them more. So it doesn't feel like I'm working on 3 separate things, that I'm working on one thing over a continuum of kind of needs. I am working on a new program about burnout because it is one of the most prevalent issues in workplaces at the moment, and just among business owners and even people who aren't working. So I'm working on a kind of a comprehensive burnout workshop with somebody else, which is always fun, for leaders and for teams, as a way of preventing it, and also maybe intervening on symptoms that might already be occurring for people, because people are, we've been through a really stressful period, and the impact of that is not over, and we're still adjusting to what life is now and how different it is now and what that means for our future. So I think that some support along that journey, I guess, if you want to call it that, is really important. And so I feel like that might be a good focus for the next program.
Yeah, amazing. Burnout. I mean, I've been there while working with someone, juggling multiple roles, and it probably took the burnout to realize that you do need to have, the mindfulness and the exercise and the other things outside of just your to-do list work-wise to perform and function at your optimum. So, yeah, I think there'll be a lot of demand for your burnout course. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to finalizing it and putting it out there for people.
Great.
I do hope it's helpful.
Wonderful. And so if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can, or, websites or contact information so that they can reach out to you?
Yep. They're Dr. Lillian Nejad. If I need to spell that, probably do. DrLilliannejad is where Skills for Life lives. And some free resources and programs and things live there. And then if people want to know more about the app, containyourbrain.com is the best place to go. And it has a lot of information on the science and also a demo that people can look at before they purchase it. It's just a one-off fee. It's not like a subscription or anything. So once you have it, which is, I think, very palatable to a lot of people who are tired of the subscription models. We just wanted to make it super accessible for people. So Contain Your Brain is a good place. And I'll leave it with those 2 because I don't want to overwhelm you.
I know. So many options, but no, I'll be putting all your details in there anyway. But thank you so much for talking to us today. I think I've gained a lot of helpful tips, and it was really fascinating to sort of learn about your journey. And I have to say, one of the biggest things I see holding people back on their entrepreneur journey is just not having the courage. And for you to have sort of taken those 3 leaps, first starting the business, then going into digital platform, and then building the app, you've obviously got a lot of courage and a lot of self-belief, and you're doing an amazing job sharing a really important message. So well done, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Shelley. It's been a pleasure.